On behalf of the London Baha'i community, I would like to warmly welcome you to our monthly fireside. This month, we are honored to have Dr. Sepideh Taheri with us, presenting on how do we build a better world for all and sharing some reflections. Just before we move into the program this evening, we would like to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this great land and express our appreciation for their hospitality, for the manner in which they care for the land, and for the opportunity we have to create a unified community that is centered around the oneness of humanity. So tonight's presentation will be about every thoughtful human being alive today will acknowledge that the crucial need of the human race is to find a unifying vision for the future of society and of the nature and purpose of life. Such a vision unfolds in the teachings of Bahá'u'lláh. During this session, we will explore some of these teachings and discuss practical, evidence-based methods which every one of us can use to help build vibrant communities and thus contribute to creating a world we all want to see and for our children to inherit. We are very honored to have Dr. Sepideh Taheri with us tonight. She is currently working as a consultant pediatrician at the Children's Hospital London Health Sciences Centre and is an associate professor at Western University, where she combines her clinical work with teaching and research. Previously, she was a consultant pediatrician and honorary senior clinical lecturer at the Royal Hospital for Sick Children and the University of Edinburgh. She has a special interest in the areas of health and the advancement of women. She has conducted many sessions and courses and lectured widely on these and other topics. Please help me welcome Dr. Taheri.
Thank you very much for that introduction, both widely and wildly. Sounds like, yeah, pretty wild. Anyway, so this is a very nice, small, select, captive audience. So we should be, I would really welcome your participation in this. And it's basically a chat, an informal chat. It's lovely to see everyone here and those on Zoom. So, how do we build a better future for everyone? So before we start, our first reflection is thinking about reflection. As Socrates says, wisdom begins in wonder. Wonder means starting to actually ask questions that are important. Wondering about how things are, why things the way they are, what can I do to change, right? The second is taken from the book of Proverbs. The heart of the prudent getteth knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeketh knowledge. It means that if we want to be prudent and wise, and we want to have a hearing ear, we should actively seek for answers to questions that arise, rather than just brushing them aside. And the Prophet Muhammad has stated that an hour's reflection, thinking deeply, is preferable to 70 years, that's a whole lifetime, of pious worship without thinking. So important for us to be thinking about these things, particularly at this time, the times that we live in this world of ours, which really appears to be crumbling in so many different ways. Yes, there are positive things happening as well. Of course, forces of construction and integration and civilization and going forward and progress on many levels, but the predominant feature of the world, of our world, is something that is extremely disturbing and should require every thoughtful mind and heart to think of how has this come about anyway, right? And what can we do as human beings alive today to try and address this and turn the trajectory around. So this slide itself, for the thinking mind, for the thoughtful human being, is enough to help us think what is happening. And it's interesting, many people aren't even aware of this, that the greatest single multinational industry in the world, right? The single thing on which the greatest resources of the planet, the riches of the planet are spent is for destruction. It's military, it's armaments. You are talking about $2 trillion in 1 year. And that actually is probably still the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we've never been as rich as we are now as a species on this planet. And yet the vast majority of our riches, our treasures, are being wasted on human destruction, are targeted towards direct human destruction. And all the wars, the conflicts, the new wars, the internal wars, civil wars, etc., the so-called mutually assured destruction, defense systems, etc., is reflected in what this is. And just for those of us who are interested in history, you will see that we are spending far more now than we ever did during the Cold War years, which was thought to be the most insecure, the most dangerous period in our human history. So this is very worrisome. And yet we're thinking in the field we're in, and I'm sure if you listen to the news, we don't have enough resources for healthcare, we don't have enough resources for education, we don't have enough resources for many of the different issues that are affecting human society. And of course, no need to show you any statistics about not only the climate crisis, climate emergency, it's climate disaster. We are literally going towards our own demise as not only one species, but for the whole of the planet. The time is seriously running out for the very physical, survival of the planet. So this is no joke. And Arnold Toynbee, who is one of the greatest, in my opinion, historians of modern day, of contemporary historians, very aptly said, civilizations die from suicide, not by murder. So guess what? It's all our own doing. It's my fault that the world is in a state that it is. It is nobody else's fault. It is not one country, it is not one ideology, it is not anything. It is my fault, and it's all of us. So what can we do about this? I subscribe to the Guardian basically news, okay? And this is what ended up in my mailbox the other day, just a week ago. So, what can we do about all this? Being part of the solution, said the journalist, is the solution. Because you've heard of that adage being said, you are either part of the solution or you're part of the problem, right? You can't sort of sit on the wall, neither go this way nor this way. That's not a possibility. Neither is that an option, right? So being part of the solution is the solution. And it is about human beings really reflecting on what responsibilities they have and how can we actually play it out. Because the other question is, I am just one single, simple human being, right? What can I do that makes any difference, right? And so most people distract themselves with their daily lives and stuff. They say, I can't do very much anyway, I'm just one person, right? So that feeling of hopelessness versus wanting to change the world and conquer the world, they often create a conflict within our psyche. And so it's important for us to reflect, how can we be practically part of the solution without being totally overwhelmed and like made hopeless and feeling our helplessness. And in case we had any doubts, let's not forget that Margaret Mead, who is doubtless one of the greatest women who ever lived, again a contemporary 20th century lady, who said that never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And there are plenty of examples. I won't mention them, but you can think about them because you're such thoughtful people. You can think of movements, great changes that have occurred in the world, in our history, plenty of examples. From recent history as well as distant history going back thousands of years, when that is exactly what has happened. Every great movement has usually started with one person and then moved on. Or maybe one person and usually a team, okay? Or a small team of followers, and then when they have the vision, that consciousness, wow, they can literally change the world when there's a critical mass, as in a nuclear reaction. So therefore, these questions that we have are matters of consciousness. They are questions of consciousness relating to each individual human being and then translating into the world at large. So what are these questions? Questions that we all ask at one point or other in our personal lives. By the way, can you see this? Yes, I'm not standing in front of it. Okay, maybe I'll move this a little bit further, right? So questions of consciousness. Who am I? Where am I? Where am I going? What should I do? What are my and the world's world's present challenges? What is our mission and how can we achieve it? So starting with ourselves and seeing how we can, that consciousness, right, can then translate into practical actions. That we use this methodology all the time in our daily lives. Our consciousness dictates what we do in our daily lives. So we just need to take this a little bit further to the global perspective, even though we are individual cells within this body. So of course we know that we have evolved as human beings, physically and socially. We have evolved, right, in sort of different periods of our history. But as we have become more evolved, particularly in just the last century and a bit, we have really seemed to have lost a sense of our true identity as who we are, with the decline of traditional spiritual traditions that guided our path in the past, and with the rise of many materialistic ideologies who look at a human being basically just as an advanced form of animal and nothing else on the material level. Okay? That is the source of the problem, because a materialistic outlook on life is a very narrow-minded view of reality. Because guess what? As C.S. Lewis said, and many others recognize, you know, we don't have a soul. We are a soul, but we have a body. And this physical experience that we have is what we call from birth to death, in fact, from embryonic life, right, to our physical death on this planet. This is actually a preparatory workshop for us to develop those qualities, those attributes, those powers that are necessary, in fact, for the next stages of our existence beyond this physical death. But if we have that very narrow-minded view that we are just this advanced monkey form that's got a bigger brain and more neurons and so on, well, we're really missing the boat. And that's why we're going into this mess, because we've forgotten about who we are as human beings. And you know, this question of who am I, you know, who we are, what is the human nature, has been so beautifully and so fundamentally, okay, answered really by the founders of all the great spiritual traditions that we have had throughout the ages. And if we forget this, then we literally go down the wrong path and we go astray. So if we go back to Genesis, which is the first book in the Holy Bible, God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. So what does that mean? Abdu'l-Baha explains, because it's not like God looks like us, we look literally like God. God is a man or a woman or some kind of anthropomorphic human-like body that sits up there and then made us, right, physically in that image. No. When you say in the image of God, it means, what does he say? The image and likeness of God constitute the virtues of God, the qualities, the divine characteristics. And man is intended, he is created, he's intended to what? Become the recipient of the effulgences, the great bright lights, okay, of divine attributes. What are these divine attributes and qualities? We are intended to reflect these attributes. Not that we're physically, literally, molecularly in the shape of God, right? But we are created because we have to become imbued with these virtues, these divine virtues which are metaphysical. So Abdu'l-Baha continues to say, by the power of the Holy Spirit, working through his soul, the human soul, man is able to perceive the divine reality of things, and that all great works of art and science, everything we see around us, the material civilization with all its beauties and successes and grandeur, these all great works of art and science are witnesses to this power of the Spirit, right? So all of this is an expression of the human spirit's qualities and attributes, which are divine and which we are intended to reflect more and more and more. And these are not just arts and sciences are the results of love, of knowledge, of free will, right? Of discovery, of rational thought, of many, many other things that we talk about. And so, if we do not know ourselves, Bahá'u'lláh says, we are all losers, big L, okay? We are losers. True loss is for him whose days have been spent in utter ignorance of himself. So this question of our identity is absolutely fundamental to figuring out, where we are, who we are, and changing our consciousness and getting things right, really crystal clear before we can move on to see then how we can translate it. And then what does it practically mean to become the image of God? I love this. This is so good because it's not just somewhere airy-fairy, esoteric meaning, but it actually is practical application of becoming the image of God, reflecting those divine attributes. There's a very clear path and very evidence-based, scientific and practical method, okay, of achieving that. So Abdu'l-Baha said, Christ has declared. So this tells us that, these sort of explanations have been there in all of our spiritual traditions. And we're just, as we evolve, we're beginning to understand more of the meaning of those past scriptures as well, which is fantastic, whether it comes... Now, I've used mostly the Christian scripture today because many of us are from Christian background, and I have some wonderful Christian friends with whom we're studying the Bible deeply. Christ has declared, Abdu'l-Baha says, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. For his bounties, like the light and heat of the sun in the material heavens, descend upon all mankind. Consequently, man must learn the lesson of kindness and beneficence from God himself. Just as God is kind to all humanity, man must also be kind to his fellow creatures. If his attitude, so if a human being's attitude is just and loving, the golden rule, remember the golden rule, if one's attitude is just and loving towards his fellow men, toward all creation, that includes nature, it includes the cosmos, it includes the climate, the physical nature, the planet, and beyond, then indeed is he worthy of being pronounced the image and likeness of God. So that those qualities and virtues which help us become the image of God and become closer, you know, to what we are intended, created to become, that can only happen if in our actions we show these qualities in our daily lives. Kindness, justice, right, compassion, mercy, voluntary sharing, right? All of those are many, many of the good qualities that we think about, the greatest of which, of course, is love and justice, right? Be loving one to another. And in this context now, the love of, in the day and age in which we live, love of one's neighbor implies what? Love of all humankind. Thank you very much. 1 point, because you finished my sentence. Just want to make sure everybody is fully awake and alert. Yes?
Yes.
Say yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And as Christ, again, as I said, I brought some passages from Christ, but similar passages and statements have been made by the founders of all the spiritual traditions of humanity. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. So the manifestations of God, these prophets of God, these messengers are the lifeline for humanity. Otherwise, how would we have ever known about any of this? We wouldn't have. Had it not been for the prophets, we wouldn't have had a clue about whether there is a God, whether there is, you know, who we are, what we should do. We wouldn't have had it. We would have been mere brutes. And in fact, there probably would not have been a single family left on the face of the planet, because we would not have known how to survive. The manifestations of God are our umbilical cord. You see that on this? They have been our umbilical cord. This is the mother, okay? The great mother. Umbilical cord is the manifestation of God. The embryo is the human soul. Very good. 2 points. You pointed to the right place. I am come, he says, that they might have life, so that human beings might have life and have it more abundantly. I have come that you might not only have good life, but have a much better life, more abundant life, not just in this world, but also in the worlds beyond this material world. And he says, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And many, many other statements similar to that. So if we understand this concept of the lifeline and how what we've done to it, we've twisted it, we've tried to cut it off, the embryo doesn't realize, right? Fetuses often don't realize, you know, what they're doing, right? Or they're unconscious. We as human souls are much more conscious of this state. So this question of consciousness, then in this day and age, as we have evolved as a species, has to do what? Expand. You know, we don't have the same consciousness as the people at the time of Christ 2,000 years ago, you know, 1,300, 400 years ago at the time of Muhammad, or 5,000 years ago. We have evolved, as you saw, as a species. So that means our consciousness has to what? Also expand and has to evolve. And Christ again put it very clearly. He says, no man puts new wine into old bottles, else the new wine doth burst the bottles. If you haven't, you cannot stick new things into an old framework of consciousness, into old ways of thinking. We've got to renew our thinking. And this is modernity. Okay? We have to move with the times, and the best people who tell us how to move with the times are actually the lifelines themselves, you know, the manifestations of God, who come in every age in our evolution and tell us something more greater of the truth of how we can translate, you know, that spiritual reality, the spiritual eternal teachings into reality and practice for the day and age in which we live. And this is so important. There is always need for new in every age of our evolution, and it's not 1 or 2 years, we're talking about thousands of years, roughly about every 1,000 years. We need a new wine, right, be put into new bottles. And so this human nature, this vision of our purpose, this vision of our purpose and contribution to the to society, to civilization building at this time has been, thank God we are living in this age. It's so exciting that, you know, we have a new vision of where we can go and what we should be doing to really help get us out of this terrible mess that we're in as a society. And Bahá'u'lláh says the purpose for which mortal men have, from utter nothingness, stepped into the realm of being is that they may work for the betterment of the world and live together in concord and harmony. So, and that we have actually all been created to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. It's giving us a whole new vision. What Baha'u'lláh, the Prophet, the founder of the Baha'i faith, has done is to give us a whole new framework, a whole new, much, much greater vision for the time of the maturity of the human race, which we are rapidly approaching. And he says that in the Baha'i teachings, it is very beautifully explained that humanity has evolved through the different stages of its existence, similar to that which a child, an individual human being goes through. This is very central. If you don't remember anything else, please remember this slide, because this is very, very central. That there was, we have passed through our collective stages of infancy and childhood, going through the most turbulent period of adolescence, okay, teenage adolescence with all its irrational instincts and difficulties and commotions and so on. And we are, there's the good news. Bad news, good news is that we've passed through stages of infancy, childhood. Bad news, we're going through the very turbulent and difficult period of adolescence. Good news is that we're actually coming out the other end, and we're at the threshold of our collective maturity. Yay! Wisen up eventually. You know? We're wising up eventually. We're at that threshold. And the greatest tidings for everybody, glad tidings, greatest news for all of us, is that Baha'u'llah's revelation is for the time of the maturity of the human race. So there are many, many teachings which are wonderful. Humanity is just catching up with them, you know? And this is the new Zeitgeist. You know, Germans would love that. Zeitgeist. That's a good word for everybody. Means the spirit of the age is moving towards all this, isn't it? Did I say it properly? Yeah. Thank you very much. Good. And this organic evolution of mankind doesn't just mean in terms of its spiritual evolution. It also has implications in its social evolution. So we have become more and more organized. You know, in the social organization of the planet has become increasingly complex through our history. Thousands of years of history, starting with the family unit. We didn't always have United Nations or, you know, global society, you know. We just had the family units getting together in caves when we were cavemen, right? Then they formed a few families, formed tribes, no yawning. Good, yawning not allowed. Then what happened is that we became city-states as the tribes. I mean, I know it's a Friday night, it's okay, but not allowed, okay? So we had, then a few tribes got together, we formed city-states, okay? And then these city-states gradually, again through thousands of years of evolution, were organized into nation-states, and guess what the next stage is in our collective organization?
Global.
Huh?
Global?
Yes, global unity. Well, don't all shout out at once, you know? World unity, okay? Don't be shy. World unity. That is the next stage of our natural evolution. This could not have been achieved. Could it have been achieved 200 years ago? Absolutely not. Please say no and yes when necessary. No. Could it have been achieved 1,000 years ago?
No.
No. Okay. 5,000 years ago? No. Absolutely not. Okay. Could it be achieved today?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely yes. Actually, it's indispensable. You know, there is no other way. I don't have time to go into all the details and so on, but there is no other way, guys. This is the next stage in our natural organic evolution, nothing can stop it, no force. And we are dying to get there, literally. We are dying to get there. So this is the single, we are getting to world unity. Either it's painful way, painful labor, right? Or it's painless labor. Epidural or no epidural. Looks like they're going through no epidural with actually lots and lots of pain and birth pangs and, you know, lots of troubles and complications. But that baby is coming. The baby of world peace, of unity. No force on earth can stop it. No force can stop the evolutionary process, because all human beings have been created to carry forward this ever-advancing civilization, and the educators of humanity, okay, and this will continue forever. This is just up to this stage, but you know, it will continue at least 1,000 years from now and then into forever. You know, this is they have been the educators, the primary luminaries that have guided our path. So, a new covenant, says in the Hebrews, in the book of Hebrews, he hath made a new covenant. He hath made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. What is old doesn't work anymore, and it has to be replaced by the new. And new wine, new bottles, new name, new consciousness, right? New teachings, new principles. Okay, the old vanishes, it decays, it goes away. You've got to have a new covenant. And this is an eternal covenant. Good news, we're living in that day when that covenant of God with humanity, not to leave us alone and without teachers, right? Thank God the manifestations of God haven't gone on strike. So they have sent us, oh, that was a good one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Say yes, you have to laugh at that. That was a joke. Okay, when I say joke, please laugh. That'd be good. So, you know, God hasn't gone on strike. He's actually continued to send us. He kept his promise, and he's continued to send us educators. And that's very important. And thank God that we have this. And Arnold Toynbee said the course of human history consists in a series of encounters between individuals, human beings, and God, in which each man and woman or child, in turn, is challenged by God to make his free choice between doing God's will and refusing to do it. I love this quote, because it brings in the aspect of free will, which all of us have, which is a divine attribute, of course, right? It's a divine virtue. What do we use? Do we use it for the good, for the evil, or do we not use it at all, right? So this is very important, right? So this is the whole course of human history is about human beings really doing the right thing morally, you know, virtually becoming the image of God, becoming what's it called? Star Wars, becoming a Darth Vader, like the source of darkness, or Jedi Knight and princess. Okay, so that's the choice that we make. And as you see from there, it can be any of those, right? So therefore, this working of the material world, this is one of the conclusions, and I know with just a couple more slides about how we do it, and then we're done because it's Friday evening. The working of the material world is merely a reflection of spiritual conditions, and until the spiritual conditions can be changed, there can be no lasting change for the better in material affairs. That's the other thing I'd like you to remember, okay? Unless the spiritual conditions are changed, there can be no lasting change. There may be little changes, you know, not very long-lasting changes, bit of change here and we get a bit better, but it's going to get worse and worse. Like a patient who's just being treated with symptom therapy, right, with meningitis, who just gets given Tylenol, but no antibiotic. It gets a bit better, but it just gets worse, worse, worse. There can be no lasting change for the better in material affairs. The universal crisis afflicting mankind today is therefore essentially spiritual or moral in its causes. And if you look at what the international agencies, which are very powerless, relatively speaking, they're going to evolve again. But they're like powerless babies right now, right? They have no teeth, they have no strength because there's no real unity. What the international agencies are increasingly also realizing is that the basic root of cause of the root cause of the issues is actually a moral crisis. And they repeat it. I don't have time to show you all the quotes. There's plenty of them. It's moral justice. It's a lack of sense of solidarity. It's a lack of sense of justice. This is what they're talking about. You go and read all the reports from the United Nations agencies. That's exactly what they talk about repeatedly. Lack of solidarity, lack of a sense of belonging to the human family, right? Watch it. Lack of a sense of justice, okay? And it is a moral crisis. So it is not just me saying this, okay? And if we all remembered, we were reminded of this golden rule, which has been repeated many times over in all the spiritual traditions. When we lose this balance, this is what happens, you know, this ruler, right? Then there is injustice, disunity, greed, cruelty, you know, all these isms of the material world, and then we do not have sustainable development because we have lack of harmony even in the physical world. Okay, so it all comes from that state of consciousness. And what is new with Baha'i is that Bahá'u'lláh says, and this is in his tablet to the great Queen Victoria, regard the world as the human body. We have to not just look at our neighbor as our next door neighbor, next village, next house, you know, next town, next country. Regard the world as the human body, and we are all interconnected as this body is. Even if your pinky is bleeding and sore and infected, it spreads through to the whole body, and the whole body suffers, even if it's one organ, one part. And so we have to dedicate our precious lives, precious days, to the betterment of the world. So what is this, you know, how do we actually go about this? First of all, is the realization of the oneness of humankind. That is absolutely important. By the way, these are Baha'i communities. If you see these pictures, we may look different, but we have the same sort of conscious state of consciousness, okay, which is so important if we want to achieve unity. The prosperity of every individual, every family, every people should be sought in the well-being of the entire human race. This is what is fundamentally new and wonderful and indispensable in this dispensation. This consciousness of the oneness of humankind, which is a spiritual way. And then, so how are we going to build this circle of unity? How are we going to achieve this? And this is some circle of, you know, again, a Baha'i community with their friends and neighbors who gather them, who is open to absolutely everyone. Look at this wonderful setting there, sitting in. I wish we could be there, but anyway, we are here and we should be very happy. So what can we do to build this society, these vibrant society? This was Hussein's question. Say something about how we can build community, how we can build vibrant communities. So how do we go about it, okay? What are the practical steps? How do we build a mature society? Number one is proper education, and I put it in there. I don't mean the school education that we receive in our schools. We don't talk about writing and science and maths and that kind of thing. Proper education initially, okay, fundamentally has to be based on a moral education of teaching us who we are as human beings, of our true identity as this potential images of God, right? And of our purpose in life. And then once you have that foundation, everything else, sciences, arts, you know, everything comes on top, on that foundation. Without that foundation, we're lost. We cannot do. So when we mean proper education, we mean proper spiritual, moral, values education for us. And then empowering individuals, accompanying each other to achieve that society through using study, consultation, action, and reflection, okay, which are scientific methods. And if there's a Baha'i experience can contribute in whatever measure to reinforcing hope in the unity of the human race, we are happy to offer it as a model for study. you are welcome to investigate what we're doing in how to build this world. So how do we build these vibrant communities? This is from some pictures from a Kips Lane community just down the road here. Okay, not far, EOA. Okay, building vibrant communities. We have devotional gatherings, prayer and reflection gatherings which raise that spiritual state of consciousness, and it's open to everybody. All of these are open. There's nothing about labels, conversion, you know, wanting to sort of impose one kind of view on anyone else's. Everybody is welcome. So that is so important, you know, that we make connection with our lifeline, right, to our Creator. The next is education of children, of course, which constitute the future generation. If we teach them to grow without prejudice, there will be no prejudice of race, of gender, of color, of nation, of creed. There won't be, because they're properly educated. And they will become spiritually and socially responsible souls who contribute actively, who see their best goal in contributing to society, and not just being, you know, like a weed, basically, right? Or a fruitless tree. See, there's some children praying at a children's gathering. See how beautiful it is when they have these qualities, these virtues, these habits instilled to them from a very young age. Okay? And we conduct junior youth groups from the ages of 11 to 14, 15, at the very critical age in that adolescence period, when we are training these junior youth all over the world to become these altruistic agents of change and not a menace to society and, oh, difficult teenagers, you know. No, they become the most active forces of change. That is the time with their greatest amount of energy and power and enthusiasm that they really want to do things, and we channel them through a series of wonderful programs to do exactly that, develop their potential and put it into practice for the betterment of society. And they get empowered, they become Jedi knights and princesses, right? And then we have these study circles which promote a culture of learning, an ongoing, lifelong culture of learning. There's never a time when we can say, oh, I know the answers, I know it all, that's it, I'm done. You know, I know this, that, the other, I've got there, you know, and that's it, I'm not going to change my mind. No, we have to continue to study, to reflect for the rest of our lives. And so this culture of study circles, when we don't have any priests, no leadership, you know, no sort of religious leaders or somebody telling you what to think, but we grow our learning by studying in groups and learning from each other, and each contributing their understanding, which God has given them, right, to creating a much better state of mind and understanding that then can be put into practice. So that's empowerment of the individual. These are some junior youth and youth groups in Kips Lane again, in our neighborhood, very close. And then we also contribute on national and international levels to the processes that are building society building powers, right, that are inherent within these principles, putting them into practice, increasing and expanding the consciousness of world leaders to, in every area, to enact these principles into action. And just remember that this New World Order is still in its infancy. It's only less than a couple of hundred years, you know, but already it has spread through all the world. The most widespread body of, widespread, diversified, yet united body of people on earth is the Baha'i international community, okay? Very, very important. Okay, but this is still in its infancy. We've got a long way to go, but you know, this baby is healthy, it's sound, and it is moving forward very beautifully. And I'd like to finish with this beautiful quote from the Bible again. And you know, when Isaiah's prophecy was that, the great Old Testament prophet, that, you know, there will come a time when nation shall not rise against nation, when men shall not learn war anymore, when the spears, swords will be beaten into plowshares. So armaments, the 2 trillion, remember, will be for health and construction and education and all of those things, elimination of poverty, all those things that should have been done a long time ago, right? And that spears will be changed into pruning hooks for agriculture, for providing organic, good quality food from everybody, which is the basis of society, right? And Jesus had the best analogy, because his disciples asked him, well, what is this kingdom of God that you keep thinking about? You keep talking about the kingdom of God coming, being established on earth. He says the only prayer, pray like this: thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And they said, what is this kingdom? What is it? What do you mean by that? And Jesus says, okay, what parable shall I give you? What metaphor, what example shall I give you that you understand? And he goes on to this. It's beautiful. It's one of my favorite quotes ever. He said unto the disciples, he said, whereunto shall we liken the kingdom of God? What comparison shall we compare it? He says, that is the kingdom of God, which is the only prayer of Jesus Christ. Okay? And he promised that it would be established. He said, it is like a grain of mustard seed. These are mustards. You know the mustard you eat, the seeded ones? The Dijon mustard, right? Mustard seed are this tiny. It is like the kingdom of God is like a grain of mustard seed, which when it is sown in the earth, it is less than all the seeds that are in the earth. This little tiny little, so you can ignore it, you can throw it, it just is useless almost. But when it is sown, it grows up and becomes greater than all the herbs, and shooteth out great branches, so that the fowls of the air, that's all the birds of the air, meaning the peoples of the world, will lodge under the shadow of it. How beautiful is that? So what does that mean? That this process, first of all, has very, very humble beginnings. Say it out loud, don't be shy. It has very humble beginnings. Second quality of this process of building the kingdom of God on earth is what? Is it really rapid? Does it grow like a mushroom?
No.
Absolutely not. So it is very slow, okay, slow. It is often painful. It is an organic process of growth. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't drop from heaven overnight, like suddenly, which is what some people are expecting, that there'll be catastrophic descent of the kingdom of God on earth. No, okay, it's not. It is like a mustard seed, grows very, very slowly. It's tiny, invisible, and humble beginnings that nobody even notices. Okay? This is a mustard tree, guys. Can you imagine? Say no.
No.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing, right? Look at this. This is a mustard tree, and that mustard seed becomes this. Absolutely unbelievable. And of course, all the birds will come and take shelter within it. So thank you very much, everyone, for your attention. If you have some comments, questions, we can discuss a bit further. Thank you for your